So, the topic, what we're talking about today, is well, something that came up in conversation recently between you and I, the differences really in our individual journeys with ayahuasca. You were one who did an incredible amount of foundational work before meeting the medicine, really readying yourself to meet the medicine. I was someone who, from a place of deep trauma and desperation, turned towards it with no real capacity to regulate my emotions properly. And the proof is in the pudding, really, the different journeys that we went on with the the medicine. Do you want to start by talking a bit about your process, your experience, ayahuasca? Yeah, give me an overview.
Yeah, I guess I started that foundational work that you talk about. For me, it was a lot of shadow work, a lot of connecting with my emotions. I spent 40 years of my life completely disconnected from emotions. It's not something I was taught how to do. And slowly bringing safety in being able to sit with whatever was coming up long enough for me to feel a shift, carrying on doing shadow work, like going really deep and finding from a intellectual point of view, understanding what my triggers are, where they may have come from. And then once I knew, okay, this is, for example, my biggest wound was abandonment. And all my life, I knew there was something there, but I really didn't know what it was and how impactful it was. Um, Today's session, we're going for our retreat container is about the shadow. And one of my triggers is people not responding. Why am I waiting? And I can intellectually now know that that waiting was for my dad, who was away in Bangladesh. And then as a 2 year old, waiting for him to return home. And he never returned home. He died. How that big life event, it was a trauma for a child, to then impact me some 39 years later, where someone said they're going to show up for a Zoom call, isn't showing up, and I'm feeling all this stuff inside of me. And I know that. But then how do I let that go? And that's where the plant medicine, taking ayahuasca, showed me the funeral of my father. And at one point, as I'm seeing this funeral, I thought it was myself, but it was actually my dad's. And so that's very symbolic and shamanic and somatic at the same time, where I'm able to grieve and that child is able to get closure. And 1 year on, it's literally a year ago, I drank ayahuasca in the jungle. Um, Hand on heart, I'm in many situations where I'm waiting and that same response or reaction in my body is not there. Other emotions I'm able to feel, and so going back to, we've gone deep very quickly. Um, the foundational work, like being able to hold gentler emotions, and it's something we talk about in the training, like the frameworks for when the feeling comes up. It's so easy to numb it or distract ourselves or overdo or deflect, stay in the head. The hardest thing to do is to sit with the emotion without all the padding, if you like. um, and that foundational work comes from the practice. So that was my experience of working with the medicine, but yours is
Yeah.
quite different.
Well, yeah, and it's amazing hearing you talk about it because I'm like, wow, you were just like able to fully go so deep so quickly. And it took me years to really get to that place. Like, I think at the time that I first decided to go and do my first ceremony, I was still super skeptical, but it really came from a place of desperation. I'd been in therapy for like 15 years, not continuously, but in and out of therapy for 15 years. And I had a really robust intellectual understanding of why it was that I felt the way that I did. And yet that was not enough to cause any tangible shift in how I felt or how I was living my life. I felt like I was constantly in fight or flight, really hyper vigilant, all this trauma in my body that was just like, yeah, tense, knotted, and I could tell you exactly where it all came from, like the narrative of my suffering, my pain, my trauma, that similar maternal wounds, abandonment, and yet that mental thing did nothing to shift my internal state. If anything, it became quite addictive to be able to repeat those tropes. This is the story, my pain. And the ego was so identified with that that the decision to go and drink ayahuasca was like, I'm so fed up of banging my head against a brick wall that I'm at the point where I'm willing to just take the nuclear option. And I was really hoping that it would be like this battering ram to my trauma, and that I would be able to shift some of that stuff in my body. And in reality, my very first ceremony was, firstly, the set and setting was just like, just so wrong for who I was and my level of fragility and vulnerability and sensitivity in that moment. I went to a retreat with a 40-person
Wow.
ceremony, no preparation support whatsoever. And I went into that first ceremony. I remember I picked the mat edge of the room closest to the door, just like the absolute metaphor how I related to everything in my life, just one foot out the door, ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. And I only drank one up. I was really struggling to let go. I had an experience, and it was me at the time really, really powerful. And yet, knowing what I know now, I'm like, man, I barely scratched the surface. I literally just dipped my toe in the pool because I didn't have the capacity to hold anything particularly deep or profound. And I think the medicine always meets you where you're at, and it understood we've got a bolter. If we push anything too hard or confronting right now, I'll be out that door. I was halfway out that door already, and I won't be coming back. So it was a very gentle introduction to the medicine, this slowly just introducing me to these feelings of love and peace and safety. And I saw a few little insights that gave me comprehension to do with my parents and their journeys, but nothing totally perception and life altering. And it was still enough for me to want to continue tugging at the thread and to keep going back. And I did. In the space of that first year, I did 20, 25 ceremonies and just continued to gently ease away at the layers, family conditioning, societal conditioning, cultural conditioning, but just peeling it away very slowly. But it was a really intense, destabilizing process that had to sacrifice huge amounts of time and energy and money too, because I wasn't at a place where I had the capacity to really meet the medicine with any level of depth. It would have been too overwhelming to my nervous system to be able to go very deep until quite literally years later. And yeah, when I think about the differences between our journeys, I think I just wish that I'd done that foundational work rather than, I mean, it tastes so bad. No one wants to be drinking this 70 times.
Yeah, I'm in all like 25 times in in year one. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I think at that point, was so desperate, had tried so many more conventional things that I was like, really, yeah, I felt a glimmer of, okay, this has potential. I want to continue pulling at this thread and seeing what I unlock. And I could feel something happening, but there was not the level of awareness there about just what was happening, the process of essentially opening Pandora's box. And I don't think I understood necessarily enough about integration, enough about process of taking the insights and weaving them into your day-to-day life. I was just like, ah, give me more, help me, fix me, heal me. And like I was sprinting to this finish line of there's going to be an end to this process where I feel like I'm done, versus, what I understand to be true now, which is that one ceremony, you can be integrating that for a decade, because the more you lean into it, the more you explore it, look at it from different angles, the more insights you uncover.
Yeah, and that is, there's so many ways we can take this. That piece around integration and thinking it's done is so common. And it would be interesting to learn what those those early experiences were like for you as a retreat and other people going on those retreats, because I've heard so many people say, I went on a retreat and I did the integration. And the choice of words, I did the integration. And when I probe them further, it's like, yeah, I did a bit of journaling, I did some sharing circles. Like the process ends, and you then go on to the next retreat, go on to the next done, basically. And then it just keeps happening. Whereas my foundational work, the way that we've spoken about it, the work is never done. The integration is never done. There's just more parts of us that we bring into our awareness. And it's it's not spoken about enough in terms of you have an experience however many years ago, it can come back to you several years later with a new dimension, a new direction. And we've both got an interest in dream work. And Carl Jung, one of the famous psychologists who brought the practice into the Western world, talks about how we need to go back to the dream, go back to the dream image and the dream symbol, and like analyze it, look at it as if it's a crystal or a diamond. And the same is true for what we see in our psychedelic experiences. We can go back from a new place and revisit it and get more wisdom and more insights. And so the integration is continuous, and the growth and the expansion is just unreal. Who I was a year ago, who I was 2 years ago, who I was 5 years ago, I can feel the shift in me. And when somebody else reflects that back, it's the case of, yeah, I can feel it, as opposed to dismissing the growth.
Yeah, I have to say, Mo, actually, like after your most recent trip to the jungle, like you're like not the same person. You feel so different to me. And yeah, I think that's really a testament to what's possible when you do that foundational work. I mean, you're literally training people on how to do the preparation work. So it's no surprise that you practice what you preach. But yeah, it was really like, I think seeing you for the first time when you got back, I was like, oh, this is big. This is big. I don't. You were obviously dieting Morosa as well, which is my favorite plant ever. So I've got a bias towards that particular growth piece. But even so, it was like change can be subtle or it can be exponential, and we love to think about this world as super mystical and impossible to rationalize and explain, but in reality there are data points about what the things you do before a retreat are that lead to long-term success, transformation, enduring change, versus what the psychological, I don't want to say weaknesses, that feels too harsh, but shortcomings are that mean that you're more likely to be destabilized, overwhelmed, or end up on that roller coaster of chasing peak experiences and that flooding your nervous system and then having to digest that and then thinking, oh yeah, one more ceremony, let's give it another go, and hoping that that's the answer. Do you want to speak a bit about, yeah, the program that you've put together for the retreat, and I guess your own, it's really born from your own practices and how that set you up for success and to make the most of those experiences that you had in the jungle?
Yeah, would love to. It's a combination of my own experience as well as reading and listening to people working in the field who've worked with the medicine over a number of years, bringing their research, and there were a number of themes that were just shared, and emotions is a big one. When we work with the medicine brings up a number of stuff because those early experiences in life, that whether it's a big trauma or a little trauma, it could be someone telling us off. For a child, that's huge. To the adult, it's like, I just scolded them, they need to be put in line. But for a child, it's huge. And then there are the bigger traumas, such as, grief, a parent dying or something else on those kind of lines. And so we learn to survive those moments. You spoke about fight or flight or freeze and fawn. And that's the psyche wanting to just survive the moment. And then we go on living with that trauma that's buried. And there are moments, and part of our being wants to heal, wants to be whole again, because we're born radiant and divine and just pure love. And we suffer these wounds and we forget that we're divine. We forget our gold. And the psyche wants to heal all the time. But that protective layer, it feels too painful to revisit those wounds. And so when we go in to a psychedelic experience, when we want to work with the medicine, a lot of the times people want to heal. But healing is pain. We have to revisit that pain. And so the container that we've put together is designed to help people access those emotions in a really safe way. So we have frameworks to gently receive those emotions. If we've spent a number of years disconnected from those emotions, how do we all of a sudden start building that relationship? So week one, we work with those emotions. We talk about the three circles, going from our safe comfort zone of emotions to overwhelm. There's a bridge in between, and we want to spend as much time as we can in that bridge to allow ourselves the safety to, like, okay, it's okay to feel a little bit, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and then allow that to unfold. The medicine reveals parts of us that we have pushed away, which we call the shadow. So working with the shadow is another practice that we both talk about. We both do this practice continuously, and once we do that, we then start bringing those pieces back, so that our being is comfortable knowing that, yes, we can integrate parts of the shadow. So when the medicine shows us new things in our shadow, we have the reference point of, okay, we've done this before, we can do this again. And we give people a toolkit. We talk about the nervous system and nervous system regulation. We provide various tools from week 1 all the way to week 9. And we have a session on breath. The breath is so powerful. And there's different ways of breathing in ceremony, but also breathing day to day, activating different parts of the nervous system. Dreams. I think one of the biggest insights I got from my most recent experience in Peru, and it's the understanding it's not about how much medicine I drink, but it's how ready I am to receive. And that working with dreams, is a way of working with the unconscious. Building up this practice pretty much every single day, connecting with dreams for 2 years, has readied my psyche to the point where I think a little bit of the medicine says, okay, we're going there. And I think that has been one of the biggest understandings for me, embodied understandings. There's an intellectual understanding, but then actually experiencing that. And so the framework, the first 4 weeks, is about preparing, working with our emotions, working with the shadow, working with the breath, working with dreams, to then go and sit with the medicine, to be able to receive what we want to receive, to move forward, depending on what our intentions are.
Yeah, beautiful. We talk a lot about this idea, and it's so true that what happens in the ceremony is just an amplification of what happens in your day-to-day life, and the relationship with the preparation, the building capacity is no exception, because in a way, if you are learning to meet yourself and your experience and your life with depth, with awareness, with presence, that's what will happen in the ceremony. What comes up for you, you'll be able to meet it in the same way and dive really deep into your process, into your experience. If you are, like I was, just kind of skirting the surface of your psyche, trapped in the mental realm, intellectualization, analysis, then of course you'll find yourself on the same plane, struggling to peel back those layers when it gets to the ceremony. And whilst I wish I'd known this stuff earlier, I'm also really glad to have had these experiences, because they inform the way that we're working now, having really seen what are the common strands and people who are able to have those deep, profound experiences, and how can we offer that in a framework to the people that we work with. Another thing we talk about a lot is that the ceremony is just a tiny little sliver fraction of the process, and the hard work happens really when you get home and you have to integrate those things. And that's not just with psychedelic journeys, that's something that applies to any profound insight, realization, life altering moment, that when it's first coming to us, it feels so visceral that we can't possibly imagine it not changing the course of our life forever. And then when we get further away from it, when we get home and we are in the day to day of taking the bins out and back in our 9 to 5 spreadsheets and whatnot, it just will fade into the void unless deliberate action is taken to make it an embodied lived experience. What have you found are the key components of successfully integrating a psychedelic experience so that that leads to lasting, enduring change?
Great question. So earlier I said journaling, sharing circles. I don't knock them. They're foundational. One of my teachers once said, if you think it, ink it. If we see it, we need to ink it so that we have the memory of the experience. So 100% document, journal, whether that's through voice, whether that's through writing. And then we talk about community, sharing in community. Something powerful happens when we allow ourselves the vulnerability to be witnessed, but also also be a witness to other people. So those two are definitely essential, but it doesn't stop there. And we go beyond those two practices. So we talk a lot about creativity, bridging bridging the underworld with this world, the ordinary world. And I loved how you shared when you were in your first experiences, sitting by the door, a foot out the door. What I say is, we want to live with a foot in both worlds. And if we take a soul centered perspective, depth psychology, we have somatic, symbolic, and shamanic practices. And our retreat container contains them all. We use them all. So somatic, we work with our emotions, our feelings. So on the other side of a retreat, they're going to be heightened. So we want to make space every single day to tune in, to listen, to feel. In if we can do it in real time, amazing. So continuing the practice, making space regularly to go in, working with creativity. So creating art, whatever form of art that is, it acts as a bridge between what you've seen in the underworld to this ordinary world. Working with nature, it's both symbolic and shamanic. Working with the elements, releasing into the ground, receiving from earth, that reciprocity. Um, we there's somatic also through voice activation, humming, chanting, moving. So, like, there are several advanced methods out there, and so we give people a whole toolkit, whatever feels right, whatever people want to explore with curiosity. It just there's so many practices out there, and one of the other ones is working with myth, personal myth, and the whole experience is a hero's journey on one level, where very quickly there's a we I said earlier, we're born divine, and then we forget that divinity through life happening to us. And the hero's journey is a call to go back to that divinity, where we leave the world that we're used to, but then that causes a lot of uncertainty. It can be overwhelming, where an ayahuasca call is a departure from the known. And that in itself can cause a lot of upheaval. Oh, is it really the call? Am I meant to go? And we talk about the wobble, where doubts surface. Should I go? Shouldn't I go? It's easy because at every point in the journey, we can refuse the call. We can go back to living in the safe comfort. I say comfort, but the comfort is full of pain because we're not happy in the way that our lives are. So we get this call to for some healing, for some transformation, for a change. And then we take these steps and it becomes overwhelming where we don't want to, and then we stay back. So that's a common theme. On the integration, you've gone through, you've gone deep, you've gained insights, knowledge, and then how do we then bridge that gap? How do we return back with those gifts? And so we offer more frameworks. We talk about the heroine's journey, something that isn't really widely known or spoken about. And that's bringing numinity. We talk a lot about masculine energy and feminine energies, and the healthy feminine, emotions, connecting with emotions is one of those. But then the heroine's journey is about making peace with the pain that's been caused under this patriarchal society, and how can we bring a new way into our being and then living with the system that we've created. So the whole piece is huge. But the point is, it doesn't end. We encourage people to keep working with this, with the work.
Forever. Forever. Yeah, it's a ongoing thing, but there's something strangely comforting about that, I find too, because when the moment that you realize there's no end point here, that this is an ongoing journey, you can almost breathe a sigh of relief, like, ah, it's a marathon, baby. There's no need to sprint to the finish line. I find ways to keep gently working through this process, peeling back the layers, showing up each day, sometimes forgetting to show up and then showing up the next day. And it just continues and it becomes a way of being rather than this slightly frenetic race to the illusion of a finish line.
Yeah, 100%. Because we go in with all the stuff that's happened to us. And then on the other side, more stuff happens to us. But with the tools we have, we can handle those newer things or new things with more compassion. Because while we go on our own transformation, people in our lives, family, friends, colleagues, they might not. And we're doing work. We know our processes and what's being triggered, but then the other person hasn't necessarily done that. And so before doing the work, it's two unconscious people having a conversation or having some kind of reaction to each other. It's when you do this work, you can honor what's happening with a new level of insight where it doesn't have to become, yes, it still sucks. Yes, there's going to be more emotion, more triggers, and what have you. Yet the way to handle those moments are different. That's been my experience for sure.
Mm. Well, thank you so much, Mo. Always a delight to talk to you, which is good because I literally talking to you every day. If you resonated with this, then we still have space on our March retreat. We're going out to Portugal again on the 28th of March. So, yeah, drop us a message. There's a link in the bio to apply. And in any case, I hope it was helpful. I hope you learn from our experiences so that you don't have to endure 70 cups of ayahuasca.
70. Do you have 70 journals? Document.
Probably no. I don't think I had a new journal for each one. Some of them will just have reams and reams of
Got it.
yeah, yeah. Wow, I'd love to dig those out. Some bedtime reading, perhaps. Hey,
Thank you
thanks so
so much,
much,
Melissa.
Mo. See you on the training. Oh, actually, I think Rocco might be coming over. Are you coming over to say hello?
Rocco.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I
Oh, he
think he
can't hear
is.
me because
I
you've got your
think
headphones on.
he is coming to say
Rocco, say
hello,
hello.
hello,
Wave to the
hello.
camera.
Hi. No, so he's only interested in me, I think. I'm gonna say hello.
But he
Say
can't hear me because he hasn't got the headphones. Rocco, Rocco. No,
hello.
he's
No,
not
you can't.
looking.
Sorry, sorry. You did. Can you see that's your Uncle Mo up there?
Rocco.
Okay, my friend. I'll see you very soon.
Yep. Catch you in a bit. Bye.
Bye.